Thunder crawled over the desert like an old beast waking. Heat rose from the dirt street of dry willow, and the sky turned the color of tarnished silver. He rode in just as the first wind hit, hat low, jaw rough with the gray of travel. Jace Calloway, a name spoken soft by some and spat by others. His horse snorted at the scent of rain. He did not look at anyone for long. A glance was enough, a measure, a warning. Clara Wynn stood in the doorway of the saloon with a rag in her hand and a quiet ache in her chest. She watched him tie off at the post and swing down. He moved like a man who knew silence more than sleep. Dust clung to his coat. Lightning stitched a thin white seam behind him. He walked toward the batwing doors, and the street held its breath. Inside, the room carried the sour weight of whiskey and wet wood. Cards slapped, boots creaked. Jace's steps were calm, a steady rhythm that the storm could not break. He reached the bar. Clara set down the rag and poured him a pour that could burn a memory out of a heart. He met her eyes, dark blue, clear, tired. She felt the heat rise to her face and hated that he could see it. He tipped the glass and swallowed. It hit like fire and steadied like prayer. He let the quiet sit between them. The silence was not empty. It was a table for two that neither knew how to set. A trickle of rain tapped the window. The storm moved closer. "You new in town?" she said. "Passing through," he answered. "That what men say when they are not ready to belong," she replied. He did not smile, but the corner of his mouth softened. "Belonging has a price." She looked at the scar along his knuckle. "We all pay. Some of us pay twice." A chair scraped behind them. A tall man with a tin star that had lost its shine shifted in his seat. Deputy Orrin Pike, the kind who liked power more than duty. He eyed Jace with a grin that never reached his eyes. "You ride hard for a man with no brand, stranger." Jace turned, slow and easy. "My horse has a brand. My soul is out for repair." Laughter stumbled around the room and fell quiet. Pike stood. He had a way of standing that asked to be watched. "You talk like a poet. You wear like a bullet. Folks here do not mind either, as long as both stay pointed away from town." Clara felt the pull of danger rise like a tide under her ribs. She set the bottle down. Steady. "Deputy," she said, "the storm is coming. We need hands to board the windows, not mouths to split the room." Pike glanced at her, then back at Jace. "I only aim to welcome our traveler." Jace did not break eye contact. "Then welcome me with work. Hand me a hammer." Pike's grin thinned. He did not like a man who stepped past the game. He also did not like the way Clara stood near this stranger. Jealousy is a dust that hides in every corner. He left money on the table and pushed through the doors into the wind. Jace slid the coins for his drink across the counter. "Keep the change." "I plan to," she said. "We will need nails. The shutters like to rattle loose." He nodded and went to the door. She followed with a box of iron nails and a hard look she wore like armor. Outside, the wind had a knife in it. Sand lifted and ran like ghosts. The first heavy drops fell, fat and cold, dotting the street like new graves. They worked side by side beneath the awning. He held the shutter while she set the nail. Her hand brushed his once. Heat jumped. She pulled back. Breath caught, then pressed again with purpose. The hammer beat out a quick heart. He did not flinch when a nail bit his palm, blood beaded, bright and stubborn. She tore a strip from the hem of her apron and took his hand. Her fingers were warm. The rain turned the dust to the smell of clay. "You should not waste cloth on me," he said. "It is not waste to stop a wound," she answered. "It is memory that wastes us." He watched her eyes as she tied the strip. There was a story in them, old and unkind. He could see the edges. He knew such edges. He had slept beside them. He let the truth rise to his tongue and kept it there, unspoken. Some words need to be warmed before they can be shared. A door slammed down the street. Men hurried, hats low, hands full of rope and boards. Thunder grumbled closer. The sky broke open, and the downpour came like a curtain. Jace and Clara retreated inside with the last of the nails. The saloon dimmed to amber. Lamps flickered. The fire in the stove caught and held, a small sun in a room that needed one. She poured him coffee this time. He wrapped his hands around the tin cup and felt the comfort move through his bones. She leaned on the bar and studied him. You look like a man who forgot what home meant. He sipped. Maybe I remember it too well. And that is the problem. She nodded. Her hair, dark and damp, clung to her neck. The sight sent a low ache through him that he hid under the brim of his hat. The room breathed with the storm, but then she whispered, as if telling a secret to herself. I used to believe the sky broke only when I deserved it. Jace set the cup down. His voice fell quiet. Storms are not punishments. They are mirrors. They show us where the roof leaks. Her eyes shone, not with tears, but with recognition. The body keeps truths that the mouth will not speak. She felt the old bruise in her chest loosen, just a little. A soft space opened, a place without fear. She did not know why this stranger could unlock it. She only knew he had. Healing does not always ask permission. It arrives like rain and waits to see if you will stand in it. The doors flew open and Pike strode back in, wet and mean. His boots left prints that darkened the floor. You two got cozy fast, he said. The wind makes folks forget their manners. Clara's jaw tightened. The only thing I forget in a storm is how to fear it. Pike's gaze slid to Jace. Word in from Blue Mesa says a man named Jace Calloway put 2 rangers in the dirt last spring. The room stilled. Even the lamp flame seemed to listen. He tilted his head. That you, poet? Jace did not move. He let the accusation settle like ash. Finally he said, 2 men died. I buried them. I never said they were rangers. I never said they deserved it. I will not say more. Pike rested a hand near his holster. Not on it. Just near. Enough to draw eyes. This town does not take to mysteries. Clara stepped between them with nothing but a rag in her hand and a spine of iron. This town takes to survival. Put your pride outside with the rain, Orin. Help sandbag the back door or get out. Pike blinked. The room watched him choose. He smirked, then turned toward the rear. I will do my duty, Miss Wynn. Do yours, and keep company with men who do not bring thunder. The words hit Clara like a slap that did not quite land. Jace lifted his cup again. He looked at her in a way that saw through the surface but did not pry. The kind of look that lets a tired heart rest. She felt steadier than she had in months. The storm thickened. Wind howled down the chimney. Rain hammered the roof in wild rhythm. Lamps wavered. Jace stood and moved to the window. He touched the frame and listened. He had a habit of listening to wood, to wind, to the soft talk of a place. It told him what it feared. It told him what it needed. He had learned that after the kind of loss that steals every map. He looked back at Clara. There is a creek behind the alley. If the water jumps the bank, it will try to take the back wall. We should brace it now, you and me, she said, if you are willing. She fetched 2 planks and a box of nails. He took one end, she the other. They moved in a narrow hallway that smelled like smoke and soap. Their shoulders brushed. Her pulse tripped. His breath warmed the cool air. The back door rattled, and the first thin wash of water slid under the sill. They set the planks and drove nails in quick, precise strokes. Their hands found a rhythm that felt older than both of them. His hurt palm smarted. He did not let go. She sensed it and pressed her hand over his for a heartbeat. He exhaled. The water slowed. The wall held. He looked at her in the lamplight. "Thank you. You can stay in the upstairs room until the storm passes," she said. "It is small, but the roof keeps its promises." He studied her, searching for the price behind the offer. He found only quiet strength. "I will pay in repair," he said. "There is a broken piano in the corner. It wants to sing again." She almost smiled. "I had a mother who played. Her last song still hangs in that wood." The thunder rolled closer now, like a vow taken in the dark. The room felt warmer, and not only because of the stove. Something had shifted, subtle as a breath shared. A stranger became a man with a name. A wary woman found a moment of ease. In the space between a storm and a silence, a seed took root. If this night has warmed a quiet corner of your heart, stay close. The rain has more to teach before it fades. The storm held through the night. Wind clawed at the shutters and rain turned the street into a black mirror. Upstairs, the saloon roof hummed with water. Jace sat on the edge of the narrow bed, boots off, shirt damp, his gun belt coiled beside him. The smell of pine boards and whiskey drifted through the room. Below, the fire still cracked. He could hear Clara moving, steady and quiet, the way a person does when work is the only thing that keeps them whole. He leaned his elbows to his knees, palms pressed together, eyes on the small window where lightning flared blue and brief. Memory came with the light. A cabin burning, a woman's voice crying his name, the flash of a badge, a mistake made in mercy that turned to blood. He closed his eyes and breathed slow until the picture faded. The past never leaves. It only learns to whisper. A soft knock came. He turned. Clara stood at the door with a lantern. Her hair was tied back, shadows flickering across her face. She held a folded blanket. "You looked cold," she said. "I thought maybe you could use this." He nodded. "Thank you." She stepped in, the lantern painting gold over the walls. The room shrank with her presence, not from space, but from gravity. She set the blanket down, then hesitated. "You sleep light?" "Always. Storm sounds different upstairs. Feels closer," she said, like the sky breathing through the roof. He gave a small smile. "Maybe it wants to see who's still awake." She looked at him, the kind of look that holds both curiosity and warning. "You talk like a man who used to pray." He met her eyes. "Maybe I still do, just not with words." Lightning struck near. The sound tore through the walls, followed by a crash of rain so fierce it drowned the silence between them. Clara startled. He stood, instinct moving before thought, and reached her side. His hand found her arm, firm but gentle. She didn't pull away. Her breath came fast, shallow. "Sorry," she whispered. "Storms used to bring worse." He didn't ask. He just stayed near. The kind of nearness that asks for nothing. Her heartbeat slowed against the quiet. "You can sit if you want," he said. "The floorboards don't bite." She half laughed, half exhaled, then sat on the edge of the bed. The lantern trembled on the table. He sat across from her, the old chair creaking under his weight. "You've seen a lot," she said. "It's in how you move, like someone who's already left twice before entering." He looked down at his scarred hands. "Maybe. The road takes more than it gives. Then why keep walking? Because sometimes there's someone waiting at the next fire." She studied him. "Do you believe that?" He met her gaze again. Tonight maybe I do. A long silence fell. The storm softened, now more a whisper than a shout. She reached for the lantern's handle, turning the flame lower. The light dimmed to amber. Her voice grew low, nearly a confession. You remind me of someone. He rode through here 2 years back. Said he was done with running. He never made it past the river. I'm sorry, Jace said. She shook her head. Don't be. The desert keeps its secrets. I just wonder sometimes if I'm meant to keep serving drinks to ghosts. Jace leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Maybe you're meant to listen until one of them talks back. The words slipped out easier than they should have. She looked at him like she felt them land somewhere deep, the kind of line that doesn't sound like charm because it isn't. He shifted, stood, and walked to the window. The rain streaked down like melted glass. Beyond it, faint lights shimmered, campfires on the ridge. His shoulders tensed. You see something? She asked. Men, 2 fires. Could be riders waiting for the flood to settle. Could be worse. Her voice dropped. You think they're after you? He didn't answer right away. Just turned from the glass, face carved from quiet. If they are, they'll come by morning. Then we prepare. Her calm surprised him. Most folks would bolt or beg. She simply reached for the shotgun by the door, checked the chamber, nodded. You sleep. I'll watch till dawn. He took the gun from her hand, gentle but sure. No, you need rest more than I do. I'll keep first watch. Her eyes lingered on his face, the lines, the distance. You don't trust anyone, do you? He paused. Trust is a word folks wear out. I prefer proof. And what counts as proof to you, Jace Calloway? He looked at her, the name heavy in her voice, the kind of question that tests the heart. After a long breath, he said, when someone stays, even when it's raining. She smiled, faint and sad. Then maybe we're both proving something tonight. He didn't argue. The truth had already been spoken. Time drifted. The fire below faded. The storm thinned into a soft drizzle that hissed against the roof. Clara leaned back on the bed, eyes closing. Jace sat by the window, revolver on the sill, watching the faint glow of those 2 fires far out in the desert. Every few minutes, lightning revealed the horizon. The fires were closer, moving. He stood, quiet as thought, and reached for his hat. Clara stirred. Going somewhere? Checking the horses. I won't be long. She pushed herself up, sleepy but sharp. If it's them, you won't make it far. He gave a small nod. I won't run. I just need to see what kind of dawn is coming. He slipped out into the hall, boots soft on the wood. The air smelled of wet sage and smoke. Downstairs, the saloon was half dark, lamplight trembling. He crossed to the back door, opened it a crack. The rain had stopped. The world was a silver hush, and there, on the far ridge, the fires winked out, one by one. He frowned. That meant movement. Behind him a floorboard creaked. He turned fast, hand on gun. Clara stood there in her shawl, eyes steady. You were right, she whispered. Riders. I saw them from the loft window. How many? 3. Maybe 4. He nodded once. They'll wait till first light. And if they don't, then we give them something to remember. She almost smiled. You talk like a man who's already survived tomorrow. He holstered the gun, slow. I haven't decided yet. They went back upstairs together. The lantern flickered low. She sat on the bed again, pulling the blanket tight around her shoulders. He took the chair, the revolver close. The silence between them was no longer empty. It was a bridge built out of storm and breath and something unnamed. Outside, thunder murmured one last time, then fell quiet. Dawn was a few hours off. The desert waited, calm but coiled. She looked at him through the dim. Jace. Yeah. If we see morning, promise me one thing. What's that? Don't ride off before I get to know the sound of peace again. He met her gaze and let the weight of it sink in. I'll promise when I've earned it. Her lips curved, not in joy, but in trust. Small, fragile, real. She closed her eyes. The lantern flame wavered, casting gold across her face. He watched her breathe. Slow and even. The storm outside had passed, but the one that mattered had just begun. If this story has touched a quiet place inside you, stay close. The desert still holds its breath for what comes with the dawn. Dawn came slow, thick with mist and the smell of wet dust. The storm had scrubbed the world clean, leaving the town wrapped in a ghostly calm. Jace stood at the window, his shoulders outlined by the pale light. The sky burned faint orange on the horizon, and far beyond the ridge, the last traces of those night fires were gone. But he knew men didn't vanish. They circled. They waited. Clara stirred on the bed, still wrapped in the blanket she'd brought him. Her eyes opened to find him there, quiet as a shadow carved from morning. For a moment, she just watched, the way he stood, the stillness that wasn't cold, just worn. You didn't sleep, she said softly. Didn't need to. You always tell the truth like it's a wound, she murmured. He turned slightly, enough for the first light to touch the scar on his jaw. Truth is the only thing that never stays buried. She sat up, pulling the blanket around her. So what truth brings men with guns to find you? He met her eyes, steady. Justice. Misplaced, maybe. But it has a long memory. Her voice dropped. You killed someone important. He looked past her, out the window again. Important to someone, yes. Guilty of something worse. I took what the law wouldn't. You regret it? Regret is for things that could have gone another way. That night couldn't. She nodded slowly. The air between them tightened with unspoken things. Pain recognizes its own. She stood, barefoot, the floor cool beneath her steps. When she came closer, she didn't mean to reach out, but her hand found his arm anyway. You don't have to keep paying for what's done, Jace. He looked down at her fingers on his sleeve. Maybe. But sometimes you ride with your ghosts until they get tired of following. A knock broke the stillness. 3 short raps, sharp, controlled. Jace moved first, reaching the door in silence. He opened it just enough. Sheriff Danton stood there, gray beard, heavy coat, hat dripping from the rain that still clung to the air. His face was carved from stone and duty. Morning, Calloway, he said. Heard we had a storm. Figured you'd blow in with it. Clara stepped closer. Morning, Sheriff. You're up early. Storm wakes an old man's bones, he replied. Then his eyes narrowed. So does trouble. He held out a folded telegram, creased and damp. It bore Jace's name in smeared ink. Came through Blue Mesa Station late last night. Wanted posters, signed by the territorial marshal. 2 men dead, 1 witness. Says you rode north. Jace didn't touch the paper. The sheriff kept holding it, waiting. I don't run from truth, Jace said quietly, but I won't wear a lie for another man's comfort. Danton studied him. I knew your brother once. He was a lawman. He'd have said the same. Clara's breath caught. You had a brother? Had, Jace said. Past tense. He stayed on the right side of the badge until the badge turned on him. That's why I left the law behind. The sheriff lowered the telegram. I don't aim to bring chains unless a man earns them. You stay put till I hear the rest from Blue Mesa. You've got my word, and my eyes." He tipped his hat to Clara, then walked away, boots crunching on the damp street. When the door closed, silence returned heavier than before. Clara looked at Jace, her hands tight around the blanket. "You should leave. If that message reaches the wrong hands, you'll have more than the sheriff to worry about." He shook his head. "Leaving makes me look guilty, and I'm tired of looking guilty." She hesitated. "Then you'll need help. I know this town, every path that leads out." He smiled faintly. "You planning to save me, Clara Wynn? Maybe just walk beside you long enough so you remember what saving feels like." For a moment, they stood close enough to feel each other's breath. The air between them hummed like the hush before a song. Then she turned away, breaking it with movement. "Breakfast's downstairs. If you're staying, you'll eat. The world may chase you, but not on an empty stomach." He followed her down. The saloon smelled of damp wood and coffee. Light spilled across the tables, turning the bottles into stained glass. She poured him a cup, black and strong, then leaned on the counter. "You think those men from the ridge were bounty hunters?" she asked. "No doubt," he said. "They'll wait for daylight, maybe for the sheriff to make his move. Easier pickings that way." Her jaw tightened. "You can't just sit here waiting to be hunted." He met her gaze. "Then what would you have me do? Fight back? Or disappear clean?" He sipped his coffee, eyes still on hers. "You sound like someone who's run before." She smiled, small and bitter. "Maybe I did. Once, I married a man who thought love was ownership, left with a bruise and a name that wasn't mine anymore. Came here to pour whiskey instead of blood." His hand rested on the counter between them, not touching, just near. That bruise still hurt, not the skin, the silence after. They stood there, words fading into something quieter. Then the saloon doors creaked. Pike stepped in, raincoat slick, eyes mean. He looked from Jace to Clara, grin already sour. "Morning," he drawled. "Seems we've got company in town that's worth a price or two." Jace didn't move. His voice stayed calm. "You talk too much for a man with small ears." Pike's grin died. "Maybe I talk enough to make sure justice gets done." Clara stepped forward. "Justice isn't what you're after, Oren. You just like the sound of your own gun." Pike's eyes flared. "Careful, Clara. Sheriff might protect him for now, but when the sun hits noon, I might not wait for orders." Jace finally looked up, meeting his stare. "Then wait till noon. I'll still be here." Pike's lip twitched. He stepped back, spat on the floor, and left without another word. When the doors swung shut, Clara let out the breath she'd been holding. "You just painted a target on yourself." He shrugged. "Targets remind me I'm still here." The morning passed slow. The storm broke fully, leaving the desert steaming under new sun. The street filled with sound again. Boots, wagon wheels, dogs barking at the light, life pretending nothing had changed. But inside the saloon, the air held the taste of waiting. Jace fixed the broken piano like he'd promised. His hands, rough and careful, moved over the keys and hammers with patience. Clara watched from the bar. The sound of wood-meeting metal filled the room like heartbeat. He struck one key. A low, fragile note sang back. He smiled barely. "You play?" she asked. "My mother taught me a hymn once. Can't recall the name, but it starts with forgiveness and ends in rain." Her voice softened. "Play it if you remember." He did. The sound came slow, uneven but true. A melody made of apology and dust. It filled the saloon until even the ghosts listened. When the last note faded, Clara whispered, "You should have been a preacher." He shook his head. Preachers talk of heaven. I've seen enough of hell to keep me humble." She looked at him then, really looked, and saw the man beneath the scars, the quiet longing for peace, the guilt he didn't deserve but still carried like a saddle. She walked to the piano, stood beside him. Her hand brushed his shoulder, light as air. "You don't have to be alone in the fire anymore." He turned to her, eyes dark and steady. "I've been alone so long, I stopped calling it loneliness. Then let me remind you." The words hung between them like a breath shared in secret. Her fingers trembled as they rested against his sleeve. He didn't move, didn't pull away. Outside, the wind shifted. The sound of distant hooves rolled through the quiet. Jace's expression changed. "Trouble." Clara's hand fell. "How many?" "Enough," he said. "Noon came early. If this story has stirred the wind in your heart, don't turn away. The desert sun has only begun to rise on what waits beyond those riders." The sun climbed hard and white, baking the mud into cracked clay. The storm had left everything cleaner, but not safer. From the second-floor window, Jace saw them. 4 riders cutting through the shimmer of heat, their shapes slow and sure against the horizon. Dust followed them like ghosts on a leash. He set the rifle on the sill and watched. They rode with the kind of patience that meant confidence. Men who knew their mark had nowhere to run. Clara stood behind him, her breath close. "You know them." "No, but I know what they want." She crossed her arms, eyes narrowed on the distant riders. "And you're just going to wait?" He turned slightly, the corner of his mouth lifting. "Waiting is a kind of fight when you do it right." Down below, the town had gone still. People disappeared into doorways. Curtains shifted, then froze. Only the wind dared move, carrying the faint jingle of tack and the smell of dust and gun oil. Sheriff Danton stepped out from his office, his hand resting on the butt of his revolver. The riders stopped 50 yards from the saloon. Their leader dismounted, tall, lean, wearing a duster the color of dry bone. He pushed back his hat and smiled without warmth. "That's Hale Granger," Jace said quietly. "You know him?" "Once. We rode together a long time ago, till he learned bounty pays better than brotherhood." Clara's jaw clenched. "Then he's come to collect." Jace nodded, steady. He picked up his gun belt, buckled it tight, and moved toward the stairs. Clara caught his wrist. "You walk out there, you'll die, or kill someone you used to trust." He looked down at her hand, then at her face. "Sometimes both happen before breakfast." Her eyes burned. "You don't have to do this alone." He didn't answer, but his silence said what his heart couldn't. "I don't want to, but I will if I must." Outside, the street waited like a wound. Jay stepped out, boots sinking slightly into the drying mud. The saloon doors swung behind him, wood creaking in the quiet. He walked until he stood a dozen paces from Hale. Granger's grin widened. "Thought I smelled regret on the wind." Jace's voice was calm. "You never could tell the difference between regret and rain." The men around Hale shifted, hands near their holsters. Hale tilted his head. "You know why I'm here. The marshals put a price on your name. 2 men dead, a third half dead, and telling stories. You hand yourself over. I make it easy. You ever made anything easy in your life, Hale?" The bounty hunter laughed. "Fair point, but I'm offering you a choice, old friend. Ride in with me quiet, or I take your ghost instead." Jace's eyes darkened. "I buried enough ghosts already." The sheriff's voice called from the porch. "Enough talk. Ain't no killing in my town without my say." Hale didn't look at him. He just smiled, slow and thin. "Then you best say it quick, Sheriff, before someone gets nervous." Clara watched from the window above, heart pounding. Every muscle in her body wanted to run, but her soul refused. She couldn't look away from the man below, not just for what he was, but what he carried. A kind of quiet defiance that made her believe in something she'd long stopped trusting. The seconds stretched, long and fragile. Then Hale's hand twitched. The world cracked. Gunfire tore the silence apart. One shot. Jace's. Hale staggered back, clutching his shoulder. The others fired wild, bullets splintering the saloon post and cutting through glass. Clara ducked, hands over her head as wood exploded. Jace rolled, took cover by a trough, reloaded, eyes sharp and calm. The sheriff shouted orders, his men spreading out. Horses screamed and bolted into the alley. Smoke rose, curling through the heat. Hale cursed, voice hoarse. "Always did shoot too damn straight, Calloway." "You should have stayed in the desert," Jace called back. More gunfire, dust lifted in angry bursts. Jace fired again, took one man down. The others pulled back behind barrels. Then the air shifted, a low thunder, not skyborne this time, but from hooves. A wagon burst from the far end of the street. Clara driving, reins tight, eyes fierce. Jace's stomach dropped. Clara. She didn't slow. The wagon barreled between him and Hale's men, forcing them to scatter. Jace ran forward, grabbed the side, swung himself onto the bench beside her. "You got a death wish?" he barked. "Maybe I've got a better plan than waiting to be shot," she shouted back. The wagon tore through the main street, bullets slicing air. Hale's voice rose behind them, angry and raw. "Bring him back alive." Jace turned, firing over the tailgate. One rider fell, another closed in, grabbing the reins. Jace shot once more. The man tumbled into the mud. Ahead, the road split. Left toward the dry creek bed, right toward the canyon. "Canyon," Jace said. "We lose them in the rocks." "Hold on," she yelled. The wagon hit the turn hard, wheels skidding, mud flying. The horses strained, foam bright against their necks. The canyon loomed ahead, red walls, narrow and winding. They raced in, the echoes of pursuit, bouncing off stone. Bullets sparked on rock. Jace fired back, once, twice, buying seconds. Then the echoes faded. Only the sound of their breath and the horses' pounding hearts remained. He looked over at Clara. "You could have been killed." Her lips trembled but didn't smile. "So could you, but I figured dying beside you beats living scared." He stared at her, thunderstruck without a storm. Words failed him. Instead, he reached across and touched her hand. Just once, a quiet contact that said everything language couldn't. The canyon narrowed. They stopped, where a fallen boulder blocked the trail. Jace jumped down, helped her to the ground. The sun burned through a thin veil of cloud, lighting her face in gold. Dust and sweat streaked her hair, her dress torn at the shoulder. She looked around, chest heaving. Now what? He glanced back toward the canyon mouth. "They'll track us by sunset. We need a place to hole up. There's an old mining shack a mile north, abandoned." He nodded, led the way. They climbed the narrow path, rocks shifting underfoot. The silence between them carried more than words. Fear, relief, the strange calm that follows survival. By the time they reached the shack, the sun had started to bleed into orange. He pushed open the door. One room, dust thick, a broken cot, a rusted lantern. It would do. He struck a match, lit the lantern, set it on the table. The flame painted her face in soft amber. She sank onto the cot, breathing hard. "You all right?" he asked. "I will be," she said, "once I stop shaking." He crouched beside her. "You were brave. Foolish, but brave." She looked at him, eyes shining in the flicker. Maybe bravery's just what happens when you love something enough to stop counting the cost. He froze, her words hitting somewhere deep. Love wasn't a word he'd heard in years, not without blood behind it. Clara realized what she'd said, looked down. He reached out, slow, hand resting over hers. "You meant it right." Their eyes met. The space between them narrowed. The lantern light wavered, the air warm with breath and heartbeat. Then he whispered, low and rough, "You shouldn't have come for me. And you shouldn't make a woman believe she could." She replied. His thumb brushed the back of her hand. He wanted to speak, but the truth was too close to breaking. Outside, the desert wind rose again, soft, carrying the promise of night. If this story has found its way under your skin, stay with it. The storm isn't gone. It's just waiting for the dark. Night settled over the canyon like a slow exhale. The wind softened, sliding through cracks in the shack walls, carrying the smell of wet sage and old timber. The lantern burned low on the table, throwing gold against rough boards and tired faces. Jace sat near the door, rifle across his knees, eyes half closed but alert. Clara lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling, the rhythm of her breath steady but far from sleep. For a long while, neither spoke. The quiet wasn't empty. It was thick with the weight of what they'd outrun. "You keep watch, even when the world sleeps," she said softly. He didn't turn. Sleep don't come easy when you've been hunted long enough. She shifted, the blanket rustling. "What did they take from you, Jace?" He hesitated. "My brother. My peace. Maybe the man I used to be." Her voice was gentle. "The one who still plays hymns on broken pianos? That one's just trying to remember what forgiveness sounds like." He finally looked at her. The lamplight caught her eyes. Soft brown, tired but unbroken. "You ever forgive someone who didn't ask for it?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Once. Myself." He nodded slowly, like he understood the kind of courage that took. Outside, a coyote howled, long and lonely. Jace rose and crossed the room, checking the window. The moon had climbed high, silvering the canyon. He could see no movement below. He turned back and found her watching him. "You don't have to stand guard alone," she said. He leaned against the wall, folding his arms. "You offering to trade shifts. I'm offering company. There's a difference." A corner of his mouth lifted. "You're braver than you look, and you're softer than you pretend." The words landed like a spark in dry grass. He looked down, then away, because looking too long might make it real. He sat back on the edge of the table, the lantern between them. She rose from the cot and crossed the few steps until they were almost face to face. The air between them was warm, heavy with unspoken things. "You should sleep," he murmured. "Can't." "Why not?" "Because every time I close my eyes, I see you standing in the street, waiting for death like it was something you owed." He said nothing. Her words stripped him bare. "You think carrying guilt makes you good, Jace," she whispered, "but it only keeps you from feeling alive." He met her gaze. "Maybe I don't deserve alive." She took his hand, the same one she'd bandaged the night before. Her thumb brushed the scar there. "Maybe you don't have to earn what's already inside you." The lantern flame fluttered. The silence grew warm. He could feel her heartbeat through her touch, fast and honest. His chest ached with something both new and old. He didn't move at first. Then slowly, he raised his other hand and touched her cheek. Her breath caught. "You shouldn't trust me," he said. "Maybe not, but I do." She leaned closer. The smell of rain still clung to her hair. His fingers traced her jaw, her pulse beneath the skin. The world outside fell away. No bounty, no past, no guns, just the quiet ache of two people trying to remember what it meant to feel safe. When their lips met, it wasn't fire. It was surrender, a slow unraveling of fear, a taste of something too rare to name. He kissed her like a man who didn't believe in tomorrows but wanted one anyway. When they broke apart, she kept her forehead against his. The storm inside them had gentled. She whispered, "You feel it too, don't you?" He nodded. "Yeah, and that's what scares me most." She smiled through her breath. "Maybe being scared means you're finally living." He brushed his thumb along her temple, memorizing the shape of her in the dim light. Then he pulled back, slow. "You should rest now." She nodded, lying down again, eyes still on him. He sat by the window, watching the moon paint the canyon in silver. His heart beat slow and steady, but something in him had shifted. The weight of guilt cracked just enough to let in light. Hours passed. He drifted between thoughts and dreams, half listening to the night. Then, a sound. Hoofbeats. Faint but certain. He stood, every nerve awake. Clara sat up instantly. "What is it? They found us." She threw off the blanket. "What do we do?" He slung the rifle over his shoulder, voice low. "We move before they surround the ridge. There's a dry gully north of here, leads to the hills. And then what? Then we keep breathing till the sun decides what happens next." They stepped into the night. The moon lit their path, the canyon walls glowing pale. Behind them the shack stood small and lonely, a fragile shelter that had given them more than rest. As they climbed the ridge, Clara stumbled. He caught her arm, steadying her. His hand lingered just long enough to feel her tremble. "You sure about this?" he asked. "I was sure the moment you didn't let me die back there," she said. They reached the top, breathless. Below, 4 riders moved through the canyon, torches glowing like hungry stars. "We'll head east," he said. "There's cover in the rocks." She nodded. "Whatever happens, Jace, thank you." "For what?" "For not running from me." He looked at her, words caught in his throat. Before he could answer, a rifle cracked. The bullet hit stone, inches from his boot. "Go," he shouted. They ran, through brush, over rock, hearts pounding in rhythm with the chase. The desert echoed with gunfire and thunderless storms of dust. When they reached the narrow pass, he pulled her behind a boulder. She pressed against him, breathing hard. His arm went around her shoulders, shielding her as bullets whined against stone. He could smell her hair, the salt of sweat and fear. He whispered, low, almost against her ear, "I won't let them take you." She looked up, eyes shining. "Then don't die trying." He smiled. The first real smile she'd seen from him. "I'll try not to." The shots faded, replaced by the hollow cry of wind. The riders had lost their trail, for now. They stayed still, the world holding its breath around them. The night was wide and endless, but for a moment it felt like they'd found something small and true inside it. A heartbeat that didn't belong to pain. If this story has quieted your soul, stay near. The desert night still hides what the dawn is not ready to reveal. The first light of dawn spilled over the canyon, soft and gold against the wounded desert. Jace and Clara crouched behind the ridge, dirt and sweat streaked across their skin. The air was cool now. the kind that carried silence like a living thing. Below them, the bounty riders had scattered, some heading west toward the river, others searching the lower valley. For the moment, the world had stopped hunting them. Clara brushed her hair back, fingers trembling. How far can we go before they circle back? Far enough if we don't stop. Jace glanced at her boots, half torn from the climb. But your feet won't like what's coming. She gave a small, breathless laugh. They haven't liked anything since I met you. He looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time since he'd known her, the lines in his face softened. You should have stayed in Dry Willow. She shook her head, and missed finding out what a man looks like when he remembers how to hope. He tried not to smile, but it reached his eyes anyway. You think that's what this is? I think you've been running so long, you forgot what it feels like to stop. The wind shifted, carrying the faint cry of hawks high above. The sound reminded him of distance, of every road he'd taken that ended in regret. He looked away. Stopping gets men killed. Maybe, or maybe it finally lets them live. He didn't answer. The truth in her voice was too heavy to hold. They started north, following the dry creek bed through the red rock and scrub. The sun climbed higher, turning everything the color of rust. Hours passed in the rhythm of their steps, boots crunching over gravel, breath sinking without thought. At midday, they found a small spring that trickled through stone. Jace knelt to fill his canteen, then offered it to her. She drank, the water cold and sharp. When she handed it back, their fingers brushed, a spark quick but deep, like the memory of a kiss that hadn't faded. "Why'd you really leave the Rangers?" she asked quietly. He sat back against the rock, eyes on the horizon. "Because truth don't fit in a badge." She tilted her head. "And because of your brother." He nodded once. "He was ambushed by the same men I later killed. They called it justice when the badge did it, murder when I did. The difference was the paper, not the heart." Her gaze softened. "You've been carrying that weight alone ever since. It's lighter than trusting the wrong man again." She studied him for a moment. "And now? Do you trust me?" He met her eyes. "I don't know, but I want to." The honesty in his voice hit her harder than any promise. She reached out, touched his arm, and this time he didn't pull away. They sat there in the quiet, the desert humming around them. For the first time, the silence felt like safety, not distance. By late afternoon, the heat grew heavy. They found shelter beneath a wide overhang, its shadow cool and deep. Jace built a small fire, the smoke drifting up into cracks in the stone. Clara watched him work. The way his hands moved, steady and sure, as if he'd been building small fires all his life, just to keep the dark from winning. When the flames caught, she smiled softly. "You do that like it's a prayer." He looked up. "Maybe it is." She settled across from him, her skirt brushed with dust, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "What do you pray for?" He stared into the flames. "A clean night, a quiet heart, a place where I don't have to keep looking over my shoulder." She leaned forward. "Maybe you've already found it." The fire snapped. His eyes lifted to hers, and for a long, slow moment, neither moved. The canyon air thickened, warm as whiskey, and twice as dangerous. He rose first, crossed the few feet between them. She didn't back away. His hand came up, rough fingers tracing the side of her face. Her breath caught, and then she was standing too, their bodies close enough for the heat between them to blur the world. "This shouldn't happen," he murmured. "Then why does it feel like it already has?" He hesitated. The fire popped again, sparks rising like tiny stars. She reached up, her hand resting against his chest, feeling the slow, steady drum of his heart. "I'm tired of running from what feels right," she whispered. "So am I." He kissed her, deeper this time, the kind that steals reason and gives it back as truth. The firelight painted them gold, shadows wrapping their figures like memory. When they finally broke apart, her forehead rested against his collarbone. "What now?" she asked. "Now," he said quietly, "we stop pretending the storm's only outside." She smiled, the sound of it soft as wind, then let it rain. They sat together until the sky turned to violet. For a while it was just breath and heartbeat. The world held still around their small, fragile peace. But peace never lasts long in the desert. A shot cracked through the canyon, echoing like thunder. Jace moved fast, pulling her down behind the rocks. Another bullet sparked off stone, inches from her hand. He peered toward the ridge. "They found us." Her voice trembled. "How?" They followed the firelight. He cursed under his breath, checking the rifle. "We'll move at nightfall. Stay low, stay quiet." Clara's hands shook as she reloaded the spare pistol he'd given her. "I'm not afraid," she said. He looked at her, the dirt on her face, the steel in her eyes. "I know," he said softly. "That's what scares me." As the sun bled out behind the cliffs, the first stars appeared. The night wind carried the faint sound of horses on the move. He reached for her hand, gripped it tight. "No matter what happens, keep north. Don't stop." She squeezed back. "Not without you." He didn't answer. The fire died between them, but its warmth stayed. A promise that neither the desert nor death could erase. If this story has stirred the quiet ache beneath your ribs, stay close. The night is deep, and its fire has more to burn before the dawn. The desert night burned colder than any winter. The stars hung sharp above the canyon, scattered across the black like shrapnel from a forgotten war. Jace led the way through the narrow pass, his rifle slung across his back, his breath steady but shallow. Behind him, Clara followed, her steps soft but sure, the moon catching the edge of her face. Pale, determined, alive. They moved in silence. Every sound mattered now. The scrape of boots against stone, the whisper of wind through mesquite, the faint echo of hooves somewhere far behind. "How far to the ridge?" she whispered. "Half a mile," he murmured. "There's a hollow up top. We can rest till dawn." She nodded, though her legs trembled with exhaustion. He slowed his pace without saying it, matching her stride, shielding her with his shadow. When she stumbled, his hand was already there. Her fingers gripped his. Small, strong, unafraid. "You all right?" "I've been worse," she said, trying to smile. "You always talk like a survivor. Maybe that's all I've ever been." They reached the ridge at last, the land opening wide beneath them, a sweep of sand and moonlight, silver and still. He found the hollow, a small pocket of rock just deep enough for shelter. He led her inside, then crouched near the entrance, scanning the darkness. "They'll wait till morning," he said quietly. "No one rides hard in this cold." "Then we have a few hours to breathe," she replied. He looked over at her. "You should sleep. So should you." He shook his head. "Sleep's a luxury I lost a long time ago." She sat near him anyway, drawing the blanket tight around her shoulders. "Then we can share the silence." The wind whistled low through the rocks, curling dust around their boots. He glanced at her profile, the moonlight tracing every line of her face. the strength beneath the softness, the scars behind her calm. He had known women who were beautiful. He had never known one who looked like truth. "Why'd you risk yourself back in town?" he asked after a while. "You could have let me hang." She turned to him, eyes glinting. "Because you didn't let me drown in that storm. That's not reason enough to throw away your life. It's reason enough for me." He looked away, jaw tight. "You think saving me makes your pain smaller?" She shook her head slowly. "No, I think it makes my heart larger." Her words cut deeper than any bullet. He wanted to believe them, but belief had a price he'd paid too often. "You should hate me," he said finally. "I bring trouble to everyone who stands too close." She moved nearer until her knee brushed his. Maybe trouble's just another word for change. He turned toward her. The closeness hit him like a slow ache. "You talk like you know me. I feel like I've known you longer than I've known myself." For a long heartbeat, neither spoke. The desert hummed around them, vast and endless. Then without permission he reached up, fingers brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. She didn't flinch. Her eyes found his, and in them was something that burned softer than fire. "Jace," she whispered. He exhaled her name like a prayer he didn't remember learning. "Clara." He cupped her face, rough palm warm against her skin. She leaned into the touch, eyes closing. His thumb traced the curve of her cheek, then her lips. The breath between them vanished. When he kissed her, it was slow. A quiet storm that asked, not took. Her hands rose to his shoulders, pulling him closer. The world outside, the bounty, the guilt, the years of silence, fell away until there was nothing left but the sound of their hearts keeping time with the wind. He pulled her into his lap, her breath catching against his throat. The lantern light from his pack flickered faint gold across the stone, catching the glint of tears she didn't mean to shed. "Don't cry," he murmured. She shook her head. "It's not sadness, I forgot what warmth felt like." He kissed her again, deeper, like he could remind her with touch what the world had taken with pain. Every movement was careful, reverent, desperate to heal rather than claim. They stayed that way for a long time. A tangle of breath and tenderness, of quiet need and unspoken forgiveness. When the wind eased, he rested his forehead against hers. "If there's a heaven," he whispered, "it probably feels like this." She smiled faintly. "Don't say heaven, we'll scare it off." He chuckled low, then kissed her once more, a promise folded into silence. When dawn came, the light crept over their faces, soft and gold. She stirred first, tracing a line across his jaw. He woke without startle. His hand found hers, holding it against his skin. "You still plan on running?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "As long as the world thinks I owe it blood. And if I run with you?" He met her eyes. "Then the world's in trouble." They both smiled, the kind that only comes after truth has been shared in the dark. But the peace was short. From the valley below came the faint echo of voices, men shouting, horses restless. The bounty riders had found their trail again. Jace stood, pulling on his coat. "They're close." How close? Close enough to smell dust. She rose too, face set, eyes fierce. "Then let them come. I'm done hiding." He turned to her, torn between fear and awe. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do. I'm tired of surviving someone else's fight." He gave a short nod. "Then we end it." He checked the rifle, loaded 2 rounds, and handed her a spare pistol. The morning sun climbed higher, flooding the canyon with light. As they stood together, side by side, shadows stretching long across the sand. Jace looked at her one last time. The woman who had walked into his storm and made it calm. Whatever happened next, he thought, the desert would remember her name. If this story has stirred the wind in your heart, stay close. The sun has risen, and the fight for peace has only just begun. The sun burned hard by mid-morning, painting the canyon walls the color of blood and fire. Wind carried the dry hiss of grit across the stone. Jace crouched at the ridge's edge, watching the riders below as they wound through the pass, like a string of black ants. 4 of them left. Hale Granger was among them, his arm in a sling, his pride unbroken. Clara knelt beside Jace, pistol steady in both hands. The wind tugged at her hair, her eyes narrow, bright with resolve. She had never looked more alive. They'll reach the basin soon. Jace said quietly, that's where they'll spread out. And that's where we finish it, she answered. He studied her, the fire in her voice too strong to argue with. You ever shot a man? She shook her head. I've buried one. That'll do. Jace's chest tightened. Then aim only if you have to. I know, she said, but I'm not afraid anymore. They waited until the riders drew close enough that dust blurred the distance. The horses below moved cautious, heads down, sensing danger in the heat. Hale rode in front, scanning the ridge. Jace set his sights through the scope. We could take 2 before they find cover. Clara touched his arm. What if we don't kill them? What if we end this another way? He looked at her like she'd spoken a language he'd forgotten. You think words will stop them? No, she said softly, but maybe truth will. He frowned, but something in her eyes made him hesitate. There was no fear there, only certainty, quiet and strange. What truth, Clara? That you're not the man they think you are. Let them see it. Let me see it. The wind stilled for a heartbeat. He lowered the rifle. All right, he said. Then we do it your way. They left the ridge, moving down the winding path until their boots hit open ground. The riders spotted them instantly, 4 silhouettes against the burning light, guns raised, horses reared. Hale's voice rang out, raw and sharp. Calloway, thought you'd hide in holes forever. Jace stepped forward, coat flaring in the wind. Not hiding, he said, just done running. Hale laughed, dry and cruel. You forget what you did, you forget my brother lying in that dust, because you decided what justice meant. Jace's voice carried calm. Your brother killed mine first, Hale. You know it. You were there. You pulled the trigger that ended it all. For a second, the air froze. Hale's jaw clenched. Lie. Then look me in the eye and say you don't remember the badge he wore, the way you stripped it from his chest before you rode away. Hale's eyes flicked, just once, enough to crack the shell of certainty. His men shifted, glancing between them. Clara stepped forward, voice steady. How long you gonna chase ghosts, Hale? You think killing him will bring back what guilt already buried? Stay out of this, Hale snapped. I can't, she said, because men like you think blood's the only way to feel alive, but all it ever does is make the desert quieter. Hale's hand twitched toward his gun. Jace didn't flinch. You pull, Jace said, and you prove me right. For one long second, everything balanced on the edge of a breath. Then Hale's hand dropped away. He turned his horse sharply. This ain't over, Calloway. You can't wash blood off dust. Maybe not, Jace said, but I can stop spilling it. The riders wheeled away, their figures swallowed by the shimmer of heat and light until they were gone, leaving nothing but wind and silence. Clara exhaled, shoulders shaking. Jace turned to her. You saved them. She looked up at him. No, you did. He smiled faintly. Then maybe you're teaching me how. They walked back to the hollow. The air suddenly softer. The world somehow changed. She sat on a rock, rubbing her hands together. The adrenaline began to fade, replaced by the weight of what they'd survived. You think they'll come back? She asked. Maybe, he said, but not soon. Hale's got truth to swallow, and that's a harder fight than any bullet. She nodded, quiet. And you? What'll you do now? He stared toward the open desert, the horizon stretching endless and gold. For the first time, I don't know. Then start here, she said. Start with peace. He looked at her, the woman who had walked through gunfire and grief and still carried softness in her voice. You make it sound simple. Maybe it is, she said. You just needed a reason. He stepped closer, the sun bright in her hair. And what if you're the reason, Clara Wynn? She smiled, slow and sure. Then don't waste it. He brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. I don't plan to. The wind picked up again, carrying the scent of rain far off, the echo of the storm that had brought them together. He reached for her hand, lacing his fingers with hers. She squeezed back, grounding him in the world like nothing else ever had. They stood there as the sky turned molten, gold bleeding into rose. The desert around them shimmered with heat, but between them, Atum calm, the eye of every storm that ever mattered. Jace whispered, almost to himself, maybe this is what redemption feels like. Clara leaned her head against his shoulder. Redemption's just another word for beginning. He smiled. Then maybe it's time I stopped ending things. As the sun slipped behind the ridge, painting them in firelight, the world felt hushed, not empty, just waiting. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled again, soft and low, like a promise. If this story has quieted the storm inside you, stay close. The next wind carries truth, and love is the only thing strong enough to stand against it. The rain returned at dusk, slow, gentle, almost shy, as if the desert had learned how to weep again. Jace and Clara had built a small fire beneath an overhang, its light flickering gold across their faces. Smoke curled upward, vanishing into the night. The air was cooler now, washed clean of dust and fear. They hadn't spoken for a while. Words felt too heavy after what they'd survived. But silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was peace, shaped by breath and closeness. Clara rested her head on Jace's shoulder, eyes on the fire. You really think they won't come back? He looked out at the dark ridge, where rain glistened on the rocks. If Hale's smart, he'll ride far and let the truth catch up to him before I do. And if he's not? Jace's hand tightened around hers. Then I'll be ready. She smiled faintly. You always are. He looked down at her, the soft curve of her cheek lit by flame. Not this time. You made me forget how to keep my guard up. Good, she said quietly. You were carrying too much weight for one man. He chuckled, low and warm. And you decided to carry half? Maybe just the part that hurts. He brushed his thumb across her hand, the gesture tender, grounding. Then I owe you something I can't repay. Then don't, she whispered. Just stay. The rain thickened, pattering against stone and earth. The fire hissed but held its glow. He leaned closer, pressing a kiss into her hair. Soft, reverent. For a long moment, they just breathed together. Two hearts learning the same rhythm. But the night still had shadows left. Far across the valley, a flash of lightning revealed riders. small shapes against the ridge. Jace froze, gaze hardening. They're back. Clara sat up. How many? 3, maybe 4. Hale among them. After all that, she said, her voice tight with disbelief. Men like Hale don't quit until they lose everything, Jace said. He rose, slinging the rifle over his shoulder. Stay behind the firelight. She stood too. I'm not hiding. He met her eyes. You're not a target either. I'm your partner, remember? The word partner hit him harder than a bullet. He nodded once. Then we do this together. They climbed the ridge, boots sinking into wet clay. The moon hung low, half veiled by storm clouds, turning the world to silver and smoke. When they reached the rise, Hale's voice echoed through the rain. Calloway, you should have killed me when you had the chance. Jace stepped forward, our rifle lowered, but ready. Killing you wouldn't have changed a damn thing. Hale's laugh was raw, hollow. You think words clean blood? You think that woman makes you good? Clara's voice cut through the wind. Sharp. Steady. He doesn't need me to be good. He just stopped needing to be bad. Hale turned toward the sound. You think you know him? I know enough, she said. Hale's hand twitched. The flash of lightning lit his face. Rain dripping from the brim of his hat, eyes wild with old vengeance. You took everything from me, Jace. No, Jace said quietly. You gave it away. The shot cracked the air. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Hale staggered, not from Jace's gun, but from his own. The recoil had sent the bullet wide. He dropped to his knees, eyes wide with disbelief. The others hesitated, unsure, their leader undone by his own hand. Jace walked forward, slow and steady. Hale looked up at him, voice trembling. Finish it. Jace stopped, rain dripping from his hat brim. No. Hale's voice broke. You think mercy makes you clean? Jace's eyes softened, sadness in them deeper than anger. No, it just means I'm finally done being dirty. He turned away. The other riders shifted, uncertain, then followed their fallen leader into the dark. The sound of hooves faded into the rain. Clara came up behind him, her hand finding his back. You didn't kill him? He exhaled, slow. I wanted to, for a long time. But wanting's just another kind of prison. She leaned into him, her voice barely above the rain. You're free now. He looked out at the horizon, where dawn began to breathe through the clouds, gold cutting through gray. Maybe, for the first time, maybe I am. They stood there until the storm eased, the first light painting the wet earth. He turned to her, rain glistening in his beard. You still planning to run when this ends? She shook her head. Not anymore. I think the world's big enough for 2 lost souls to stop running. He smiled, small and tired and true. Then maybe we build something, a place that doesn't ask what came before. She smiled back, somewhere with a roof that keeps its promises. He laughed softly, the sound like sunlight breaking after years of dark. I'll hammer every nail myself. She stepped closer, her hand resting against his chest. Then start, now. He kissed her, slow, certain, full of every word he didn't know how to say. The rain fell soft around them, washing dust from their faces, leaving only the quiet truth of what remained. When they broke apart, she whispered, What happens now? He looked toward the rising light. We go home, wherever that is. The wind sighed through the canyon, not as a warning, but a benediction. The storm was over. What waited ahead was something the desert hadn't seen in a long time. Peace that didn't demand blood. If this story has softened the thunder in your chest, stay close. The dawn still has one last truth to tell, and love is the only thing that survives the light. Morning came quiet, washed in silver and gold. The storm had passed, leaving the desert breathing slow again, every rock still wet from the rain. The sky stretched wide and endless above them, streaked with soft clouds that glowed like ash turned to light. Jace and Clara walked side by side through the valley, their boots sinking into damp earth. The smell of wet sage and smoke lingered, a memory of both destruction and rebirth. For the first time in years, he wasn't listening for footsteps behind him. The silence didn't threaten anymore. It welcomed. "You ever notice," Clara said, voice low, "how the desert smells different after it cries?" He looked around, the world spread open like a promise. "Like forgiveness," he said. She smiled. "Maybe that's what this place has been trying to teach you all along." He chuckled. "I've been too stubborn to listen." They reached the ridge where the land broke wide, miles of empty horizon rolling toward blue mountains. The light painted her face gold, her eyes bright and unguarded. He stopped to take it in, the sight of her there against the vastness. "What?" she asked. He shook his head. Just didn't know peace could look like this. She stepped closer, slipping her hand into his. "Then hold on to it. It doesn't come easy out here." He squeezed her fingers, rough thumb brushing the pulse in her wrist. "I'm done letting it go." They kept walking until they found what used to be a small ranch, a broken fence, a half-collapsed barn, and a house with no door, only wind. Jace stood at the gate, eyes tracing the bones of what once was. "Belong to the Wyatt family," Clara said quietly. "They left after the drought." He nodded. "Looks like the land's been waiting." "For what?" "For a reason to start again." She turned toward him, her voice soft. "You thinking what I think you're thinking?" He smiled. "If you're thinking this could be home, then yeah." They spent the day working, clearing brush, patching the barn roof with scraps of tin they found half buried in the sand. The rhythm of labor came easy between them, sweat mixed with laughter, dust with sunlight. Every nail he drove felt like a small redemption. By late afternoon, a fire burned steady in the old stone pit. Clara stirred a pot of beans over the flames, while Jace mended the last hinge on the barn door. When he joined her by the fire, she handed him a tin plate. "It's not fancy," she said, "but it's warm." He took it, their fingers brushing. "That's more than I've had in years." They ate, in silence, watching the light fade from orange to violet. The quiet wrapped around them again, gentle and full. After a while, Clara spoke. "You ever think about what comes next?" He poked at the fire, sparks rising. "Every night, I used to think tomorrow was something you survived. Now I think it's something you build." She nodded, eyes glistening in the glow. "And what do you want to build, Jace Calloway?" He looked at her, no hesitation. A place where no one has to run, where the wind doesn't sound like danger anymore. Her voice broke, just slightly. "You mean for both of us?" "For both of us," he said. The last of the sunlight faded, leaving them bathed in firelight. The shadows danced along the walls of the ruined house, two figures reborn out of dust and storm. He reached for her hand again, his voice low. "You changed everything I thought I knew about love." She smiled through tears. "I didn't change it. You just remembered it." He leaned closer, his forehead resting against hers. The world around them disappeared into warmth and silence. Outside, the desert stretched endless, but inside that small circle of light, time finally stopped running. The fire cracked, echoing like a heartbeat. She whispered, "Do you think this will last?" He smiled. The storm thought it would last, too. But look, the sky always clears. He kissed her then, slow and certain, the kind of kiss that feels like a vow. It wasn't passion that burned between them now. It was peace, steady and earned. When they pulled apart, she tucked herself against his shoulder, his arm wrapping around her. The stars above them flickered back to life, one by one, scattered across the sky, like hope rediscovered. He looked up, voice a whisper, meant only for her and the desert that had carried them this far. Guess even the wild needs a place to rest. She smiled against his chest, and it found one. They sat together until the fire died to embers, until dawn began to breathe, once more, across the horizon. The world was still rough, still cruel, still vast, but they weren't lost in it anymore. They'd found the quiet between storms, and in that quiet, they finally belonged. If this story has touched a tender place in your heart, let your light stay with us. Comment, share, and subscribe so this Western fire keeps burning for you.